In a world where the lines between right and wrong blur, one woman's quest for justice turns into an unexpected journey of self-discovery. I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore is a darkly comedic tale that will leave you questioning. How far would you go to make the world a better place? Dive into this offbeat odyssey where the ordinary becomes extraordinary and the overlooked takes center stage. The film begins with Ruth attending to an elderly, ailing patient who shared his unsolicited opinion on African Americans before passing away. Overwhelmed by the day's stress, Ruth opts to unwind at a nearby pub, engrossed in a novel. There, she encounters a gentleman who interjects about her reading material, piquing her interest when he discloses the book's plot twists that captivated her. Upon returning home later, she discovers her residence has been ransacked. In her quest to understand the incident, she perceives peculiar activity in an adjacent room. Stealthily, she arms herself with a kitchen blade, hoping to intimidate the intruder, only to find the room empty. Subsequently, she contacts law enforcement, who, after examining the premises, ascertain that her computer, certain pharmaceuticals, and her grandmother's silverware have been pilfered. They probe her about the theft, only to realize her absent-minded and nonchalant demeanor, as she seems oblivious to the happenings within her own abode. The officers advise her to be vigilant regarding her domicile's security, though they offer no assurance of apprehending the thief. That evening, Ruth visits a companion, feeling aggrieved not by the loss of possessions, but by the invasion of her sanctuary. She confides in her friend about the day's events, including the loss of a patient, and vents about the repulsiveness of humanity, becoming overwhelmed with emotion. Fortunately, her friend consoles her, reminding her that not all people are alike. The following morning, she returns home to find canine feces on her lawn, a recurring issue despite a clear prohibition sign. Observing a man with his pet, she furiously collects the fecal matter and hurls it at him, confronting his negligence. The man expresses shock and promptly offers his regrets, claiming he missed the warning. As Ruth re-enters her home, she grows vigilant, commencing a thorough cleanup and replacing outdated locks. She takes it upon herself to spot any vulnerabilities that might have been exploited by the thieves. Fortuitously, she discovers a deep footprint in the mud. Rushing to acquire plaster, she molds the impression using scrambled eggs. She inquires with her neighbors about the burglary, but they provide no valuable insights. She approaches the final neighbor, who, to her surprise, is the same individual responsible for the pet waste in her yard. He apologizes again and vows to rectify their report. Ruth divulges the true purpose of her visit, informing him of the break-in and the authorities' lack of assistance. His anger alarms Ruth, prompting her swift departure, unwilling to entangle herself in an untenable situation. As she nearly abandoned her quest, Ruth decided to give the location app another try to locate her laptop. At that moment, her phone signaled, pinpointing the laptop's position on Grove Street. Anxious about the ordeal, she swiftly contacted the police, who declined to send officers, instructing her to update her report instead. Agitated, Ruth ventured to the traced area to investigate. After a period of surveillance, she was about to emerge when a sudden loud noise made her recoil. In dire need of backup, she approached her eccentric neighbor Tony, detailing her laptop's tracking. Tony, fancying himself a ninja, assured her of his readiness. Upon arrival, Tony's nerves kicked in, and he resorted to prayer. Ruth feared she might have to rescue her would-be rescuer. They approached the residence of the suspected thief, where they encountered a stern-looking man smoking. Ruth laid out her predicament, seeking a peaceful resolution, but he dismissed her concerns with a laugh. In a mishap, Tony's weapon struck the man's nose, causing a bleed and a chase inside. The other residents were petrified, allowing Tony to take charge. Ruth located her laptop, and its ownership was verified in front of them. She reclaimed her laptop and inquired about the stolen silverware. The accused thief expressed shock, claiming he had purchased the laptop from a shop called Killer Sills, denying any theft. Tony and Ruth departed with the laptop, returning home to celebrate their successful retrieval. The narrative shifts to an uninvited burglar at a party, pilfering jewelry but drawing attention due to his furtive behavior. As he attempted to leave, a guest confronted him, threatening to alert the authorities. Panicked, the burglar assaulted the man and escaped into the woods, where he rendezvoused with his accomplices, handing over the loot. The following day, Tony and Ruth were seen breakfasting, yet unease lingered as Ruth sought the salvage shop to recover her grandmother's silverware. At the shop, they were greeted by an elderly clerk who offered music, which they declined. Ruth inquired about recent silverware arrivals. As the clerk began showcasing his wares, the doorbell signaled another customer's entry, leaving them to peruse the shop while he attended to the newcomer. Browsing the shelves, Ruth stumbles upon her grandmother's silverware set. Memories of their time together flood back. She signals Tony to ready the car for a swift departure. Coincidentally, the burglar and his crew had stopped by the shop, parking their van next to Ruth's vehicle. As Ruth prepares to leave with the silverware, she recognizes the burglar's shoe print, matching the one in her yard. She confronts him while the shopkeeper accuses her of theft. In the ensuing scuffle, the shopkeeper grabs Ruth, prompting her to retaliate with the silverware box. Enraged, he injures her fingers, but Tony intervenes, incapacitating him. At the hospital, Ruth's fingers are treated, and she's cautioned against alcohol and driving. On the way home, Tony shares his loneliness, and to uplift Ruth's spirits, suggests an afternoon church service. Simultaneously, the burglars meet with an arms dealer, exchanging threats and jokes. Dismissing the tension, they focus on their transaction. Meanwhile, Ruth laments their failure to catch the burglar, but Tony reveals he's obtained the vehicle's license plate number, leading them to a man named Christian Rumax. The following day, Ruth presents the footprint and vehicle registration at the police station, asserting Christian's involvement in the burglary. The officer, frustrated by her claims and personal intrusion, dismisses her concerns, preoccupied with his own impending divorce. Undeterred, Ruth buys a counterfeit badge and, with Tony, confronts Christian at his mansion. They're welcomed by his wife, who offers hospitality and nut milk while they await Christian. In conversation, Ruth learns Christian is a lawyer who gifted the van to his son, Chris Jr. Chris's substance abuse led to Christian severing ties, including cutting off his credit card. While discussing, Christian, accompanied by his bodyguard, enters and realizes they're imposters. Ruth explains their ruse, but Christian, unfazed, suggests money can solve everything, which Ruth rejects, wanting moral change instead. Enraged, Ruth vandalizes Christian's lawn sculptures, absconding with a tiger statue. Chris's gang, feeling threatened by Ruth and Tony, decides to follow them. Tony disapproves of Ruth's actions, especially taking the statue, and distances himself from her increasingly erratic behavior. The gang confronts Ruth in the altercation. Chris is struck by Ruth and stumbles into traffic, where he's hit by a bus. As Ruth attempts to call for help, the gang kidnaps her. Regaining consciousness, Ruth finds herself with the gang, now armed and coerced into aiding a robbery at Christian's mansion. Inside, the robbers demand Christian, who, sensing danger, arms himself but is shot in the hand during the confrontation. Amidst the chaos, Ruth vomits and drops her unloaded gun, which the bodyguard tries to use, only to be killed by the gang leader. Marshall forces Christian to open the safe, which is empty. Angered by the fruitless robbery, Marshall's daughter, also a gang member, decides to eliminate everyone. However, Tony intervenes, injuring her with a thrown spike. In a rage, she accidentally injures herself with her own gun. As the confrontation escalated, Christian attempted to seize Marshall's firearm but was fatally shot in the head, a consequence of Tony's earlier actions. Marshall's daughter inflicted severe wounds on Tony before she was accidentally shot in the head amidst a struggle between Ruth and her father. Ruth managed to escape with Tony, evading further danger after witnessing the tragic demise of Marshall's daughter. However, Marshall, driven by vengeance, pursued Ruth. In her attempt to elude him, Ruth entered a dense forest, but Marshall was relentless. Prioritizing Tony's safety, Ruth concealed him in a secure location to confront Marshall alone. In a desperate bid for survival, Ruth hurled stones at Marshall, causing him to tumble into a pond where he met his end at the fangs of a venomous snake. Returning to Tony, Ruth was devastated to discover he had succumbed to his injuries. Their budding friendship had been cut short, leaving her grief-stricken. Following the harrowing events, Ruth visited the police station, determined to validate her claims. The ordeal had plunged her back into solitude and melancholy, haunted by the ghostly presence of her dear friend Tony. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to catch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.